You didn't apply to be a spy. You applied to a job listing on usajobs.gov that said intelligence analyst and had a benefits package. That's how it starts for most people. Here's every level of what comes after you click submit. The application is longer than any job application you've ever filled out. They want to know everywhere you've lived since you were 18, everyone you've been in a relationship with, every country you've visited, every drug you've ever taken, and whether you've ever had contact with a foreign national. You answer all of it honestly, thoroughly, in the kind of detail that feels excessive until you realize it's not even close to excessive. It's the baseline. They also want references. Not 2 or 3. 8. People who've known you at different stages of your life, in different contexts, who can speak to your character, your judgment, your reliability under pressure. You provide them. Your references get calls from numbers they don't recognize, asking questions they weren't expecting. Some of them call you afterward, confused. You tell them it's fine. It is fine. It's also going to take 18 months and involve someone having a conversation with your 3rd grade teacher about whether you were a truthful child. She says yes. You find this out later. It's somehow the detail that makes the whole thing feel real. You won't know for a year and a half whether you got the job. Most people quit waiting. You don't. The farm is real, and it's in Virginia, and you are not allowed to say where exactly. What you can say is that it's nothing like the movies, which is both reassuring and disappointing in equal measure. You learn things that are genuinely useful: surveillance detection, source handling, how to have a conversation that isn't the conversation you're actually having. You learn things that seem useful until you're in the field and realize the simulation was missing about 40 variables that turn out to be the important ones. Your instructors are good. They give you feedback that is technically positive and tells you nothing about whether you will actually be able to do this job when it's real, and the stakes are real, and nobody's watching to step in if you get it wrong. You are good at the tests. You are good at the assessments. You graduate feeling ready in the way that people feel ready before they've done the thing. That feeling is not useless. It just has an expiration date, and the expiration date is the first week on the job. The first assignment brief lands on your desk on a Tuesday. You read it 3 times. The 3rd time, you understand what they're actually asking. Your job is to read things and decide what they mean, and write reports that go to people who make decisions based on what you wrote. The chain between your desk and any actual outcome is long enough that you can almost pretend the outcomes aren't connected to you. Almost. You get good at reading signals, patterns, the space between what a source says and what they mean. You build mental models of situations you'll never be inside, making calls about intent and capability from documents and intercepts and second-hand accounts, knowing the whole time that you might be wrong and someone will act on it anyway. You also get good at something nobody warned you about in training, which is sitting with uncertainty long-term, not resolving it, not suppressing it, just carrying it alongside the work like a second bag you've stopped noticing. You're good at this. Your reports are clean and well-sourced, and your supervisor stops editing them after month 4. That's the highest praise available in this building, and it's delivered by the absence of red ink. 6 months in, your supervisor pulls you aside and says they want to move you to a different kind of role. You say yes before they finish the sentence. Your job now is people. Specifically, convincing people to betray their country, their organization, or their colleagues, slowly, carefully, over months or years, in ways they often don't fully recognize until it's too late to reverse. You are good at this. That's the part nobody prepares you for. How natural it feels, and what that means about you. You build relationships that are real in every functional sense. There is genuine rapport, genuine trust, sometimes genuine affection, except that they exist to extract something. The people you recruit are sometimes good people trapped in bad systems who see you as a way out. Sometimes they're opportunists who see you as a transaction. You treat them like assets because that's what the organization needs them to be, and most of the time that's fine, and occasionally it isn't, and you file the report accurately and move on, because moving on is the only available option, and you've gotten good at it. One of your assets goes quiet. You follow protocol. 3 weeks later, you find out why they went quiet, and you follow protocol for that too. Something happens. You're not going to describe it in any detail, not because you can't, but because the details aren't the point. The point is that it was your call, based on your intelligence, and the outcome was real and irreversible and correct by every metric the organization uses to evaluate these things, and you will think about it for the rest of your career. Not because it was wrong, because it was right, and you made it, and now you know what that feels like, and you can't unknow it. You file the report, you go home, you watch television, your hands are completely still. Monday morning, new brief on your desk, you open it. At some point, not dramatically, not in a moment of crisis, you sit with what this job actually is, not what you thought it was, not what the training prepared you for, what it actually is, based on everything you've done and seen and decided and filed reports about. And you decide to stay. Not because it's easy, not because you love it, because you're good at it, and the work matters, and someone has to do it, and you've already crossed enough lines that the question of whether to cross them is no longer the interesting question. The interesting question is how to cross them well. You open the brief. You get to work. Your clearance level goes up. Your circle of people who know what you actually do goes down to 4. You stop explaining what you do at dinner parties. Not because it's classified, some of it is, but because the explanation takes too long and lands wrong, and the truth is too far from what people imagine for the gap to be bridged in casual conversation. You've learned to work inside systems that don't make sense from the outside, finding the load-bearing rules and ignoring the ones that are theater, knowing which relationships matter and which ones are maintenance. You've been right enough times that people listen when you express uncertainty. They've learned that your uncertainty is more informative than most people's confidence. You've been wrong enough times to know what wrong actually feels like in your body, as opposed to the abstract understanding of wrongness you had at level 2. The job has gotten quieter, not easier, quieter. There's a difference, and it took years to learn it. They ask you to run something, not assist. Run. You run assets you will never meet, in places you will never visit, making decisions based on intelligence you can't fully verify, knowing that someone in the field will act on what you decide, and that the lag between your call and their action is long enough for things to change and short enough that you can't wait. You've become the voice your level 2 self heard on the other end of the line, the calm, specific one that gave instructions without explanation and expected them to be followed. You understand now why that voice sounded the way it did. Not cold, not indifferent, calibrated. The emotion is still there. It's just not useful in this context, so it lives somewhere else, in a place you access at appropriate times. And that separation is not damage, it's adaptation. You tell yourself that on the days when it matters to say it. Most days it's true. They offer you a posting you've been building toward for 11 years. You ask for 48 hours to think about it. You don't need 48 hours. You just want them. You take the posting. You've been in long enough that the institution has shaped you in ways you can't fully see from the inside anymore. You only see it when you meet someone at level 1 and notice what they're still carrying that you put down years ago without noticing. Your judgment is good. Your instincts are reliable in the specific way that comes from having been wrong in recoverable situations enough times to know where the edges are. You've stopped being surprised by what people are capable of, on either side, in either direction. The world is exactly as complicated as it looked from the outside, just more specific. You know which parts of the complexity matter and which parts are noise, and that knowledge, which took everything it took to acquire, is the whole job. You knew that at level 1 in the abstract. You know it now the other way. In your hands, in your eyes, in what you notice when you walk into a room for the first time. Everyone who applies thinks they're going to be something specific: analyst, officer, operative, the version of the job they saw in a movie or read about in a book. Nobody ends up being that. They end up being whatever the organization needed when they were ready, shaped by the decisions they made and the ones made for them, carrying things they can't talk about in a life that looks completely normal from the outside. The hands are still. The work continues. You clicked submit on usajobs.gov. That was the last simple thing.